Afternoon, everyone. Croeso, welcome to the session, managing shared iPads for Cyber Essentials. I'm John Moore, I'm an engineer at Cardiff University, and yeah, this is all about Cyber Essentials. It's a hot topic right now, has been for a good few years, and I've learned a few things using some of the apps in this solution. I found them interesting, it could be useful to you, so I'd like to share them with you. And there's quite a lot of slides in this, there might be a record, 112, so I'm going to be speed running through quite a lot of it, so if you want to get the slides and links, and there's also a link to our Apple admins group, if anybody wants to join that. And on GitHub, there's also a link to my LinkedIn profile, so if you think of any questions after the session, just reach out and I can try and help out. I'll also show this right at the end, just in case anybody had any problems with it. So the agenda, we'll look at the current state of Cardiff as it is today with shared iPads. What is Cyber Essentials? We'll go through a demo of what the outcome of all this is to show what could be achievable, then look at how to do it, some of the key takeaways, summarise it all, and some steps about the future progress. So Cardiff, it's one of the largest universities in the UK, a member of the Russell Group. It's got lots of students, lots of staff, and lots of devices to manage that goes along with all that. The current state of our shared iPads, almost 1,000 in production, 60 plus PreStages growing all the time, lots of different styles of building configurations because it's not just one person doing it. I think we've got 36 technicians all doing this at the same time. There's no user access control to the configurations, no compliance, no single sign-on. And if one school wants to loan their iPads to another school, maybe they've got a big event, they don't have enough devices, it requires IT staff to go into Jamf and move things around, so quite time consuming. In Cyber Essentials, definition is the minimum standard of cybersecurity recommended by the UK government for organisations of all sizes. And it's great as a security baseline, but crucially, it's also a requirement for many research grants. So it has a wide-ranging impact. At a higher level, the 5 technical controls for Cyber Essentials are firewalls, secure configuration, security update management, user access, and malware protection. So to achieve firewalls, we would secure the on-campus network. Home networks outside of the university aren't in scope, it's only on-site, so if you've got your security and network team working on that, that's one off the list. Secure configuration can be handled with automated device enrollment in Apple School Manager or Apple Business Manager. We can also configure the passcode requirements and other restrictions to prevent jailbreaking. For security update management, recent DDM blueprints seem to work really well, and app maintenance settings, just to keep everything up to date. User access, we can use Jamf setup and Microsoft Entra to control that. And for malware protection, it's going to be the app control restrictions, only allow certain apps to be available, that type of thing. So a demo, how does it all look? So this is the choosing a configuration, the onboarding, if you like. A passcode is required out of the gate. That's not part of the apps or anything, that's just for the system. Then they go into Jamf setup, and they are prompted to authenticate. So this is a user access control. So we're using Entra here. I was very careful to enter my password, so this will take a bit longer than usual, unfortunately. So authenticated, presented with a list of available configurations. Chose one. It's changed the extension attribute in the device record in Jamf, and it's brought it within the scope of a group, profiles, apps, all that kind of thing. And of course, change the wallpaper, and you can put some text on it to advise the user. Really, we don't want any documentation to be necessary for this. It should be simple enough that you can just read the wallpaper. Also worth stating that the first user will be prompted to register the device in Entra. And it's very straightforward. They don't even need to authenticate. It's just go into Jamf setup, you get directed to the Authenticator app where you tap on the register button. That's it. And if a user isn't authorized to access any configurations, they're presented with this. There's some text about to block users, things like that. And when it is registered, this is what it looks like in Entra. Notice how there is no owner for this shared device like the other ones. So it is a proper shared device mode. And then the other part of it is when they're finished with the configuration, they should go through Jamf's reset application, which will clear the extension attribute and the device record in Jamf, taking it back to baseline state, ready for the next user. So that was reset the configuration. This is reset the device using return to service. So more dangerous, more impact. Nice big red warning button with 5 seconds to back out of it if you didn't intend to wipe the device. Get confirmation, and then the device will, it was hard to record this, but after this point the device will just restart. It's kind of like Auto Advanced for macOS if you use it in labs. This is the equivalent for iPads and iPhones. It caches the language and location. It caches a Wi-Fi profile, so that when it comes through to Setup Assistant, it's automatically choosing those settings. And ultimately, it means zero-touch enrollment for shared iPads. And you can also achieve return to service through the Jamf Pro console remotely if you don't want to do it through the device itself. You just need to tick that box when you're wiping return to service during device reset. Worth highlighting, there are differences when it comes to web browsing. In these examples, I'm logged in with my primary account in Safari, Edge, and Intranet WebClip. Reset the device. And then I'll sign in with a different account. So this is to highlight the difference in data security risk between the 3 different methods of accessing a URL. So again, before they can get into Jamf setup, you need to set a passcode. Then you need to authenticate with Entra. And this one I was really, really careful, so it's even slower than the last one. if there's only one configuration available for the account, it's automatically chosen. The person doesn't need to tap on it. It's deployed. And if you go into Safari, you can see that it's still remembered the last user login, so not great for security. Go into Edge, and it works well. It's automatically signed out the last user. It's signed in the current user, so that's single sign-on for shared devices. And the web clip, because it's removed when it resets to that baseline configuration and then redeployed when you choose this configuration, it's not remembered the last session data, so it's clean. But it does use the single sign-on extension within Authenticator to automatically log in the current user, the new one. So for this kind of use case, check all the apps that you're using in your configuration, but generally Safari for web browsing is a risk. Use Edge if you can, or even web clips. Both of them seem to work well. So that was the demo, and I can show how to do it. Like I said, there is lots of slides. I'll probably go quick, but everything is on GitHub to look back at later. So these are all, well, a lot of the components that go into this solution. Apple School Manager, Entra, Jamf Setup, Jamf Reset, Authenticator, Jamf Return to Service, and of course, Jamf Pro. The device requirements, as long as you've got a device that can run iPadOS 17, you should be able to use all of this. And the type of age that is an iPad from 2018, so it's fairly compatible. You know. So in Apple Skill Manager, it's always useful to have automated device enrollment set up. It's very easy, just log in, associate it with an MDM, job done. And then you need Jamf Pro, because it is using Jamf apps, they're not compatible with other MDMs, so it has to be Jamf Pro. Although perhaps Jamf School as well, but I haven't tested that. Might try and go back, there we go. Yeah, put a poll out for this session, just to see who is using Jamf Pro. And it's almost a 50-50 split, so maybe you're using Jamf for your Macs, but something else for iPhones and iPads, but this might give you an option going forward. So the PreStage, like I said, we had more than 60. We can reduce that now into a single PreStage, give it a standard convention name that you use. We want to enable return to service, specify the Wi-Fi profile that RTS will use. We'll look at that later on. And enable the preserved managed apps. This just means that when the device is wiped, it's not going to fetch the app installers again. It's going to use a locally cached installation of them, so it just speeds up that process of getting back to a clean device. Standard settings, requiring OS updates installed before enrolling. Install profiles and managed apps before setup assistant. Prevent the user from enabling activation lock. But probably stuff that you're already using in a lot of cases. We also want to skip all of the setup assistant screens. If you choose to show any, it's going to break that return to service workflow, so that's really important. And just finally, that mobile device name, we use org name space serial number across all our managed Apple devices. Serial number just makes it easier to look up later on. And then moving on to smart device groups, lots of groups to set up, but you start with that base group, and that's just sourced from having the PreStage everything at PreStage will go to that smart device group. Then we look at all the groups for each Jamf setup specific role, the ones that are available in that list when you open Jamf setup. So it's 4 examples here. So use the same main shared iPad group, but also require the Jamf setup selection extension attribute criteria. Again, I'll show you how to set that up later on. But that's how you tell them apart and organize them. And for each group, we'll have a distinct wallpaper, and you can put some extra text on it just to help the user out when they're using it. Then after the role groups, we move on to the shared device compliance groups, where we can define the scope, the criteria, and the state of compliance. You know, things like applicable, compliant, jailbreak, not in line recently, old operating system. So applicable devices is just the scope, the range of all the devices that should be considered for device compliance. And then the groups that will define the criteria. So for this one, it's is jailbreak detected? Has it been online recently? And is it running an old operating system? So CE requirements are N-2 generally. I think there might be some wiggle room on iPhone and iPads, some differences when it comes to iOS 17, some of it's supported, some isn't. But generally, if you stick to N-2, you can't go far wrong. Then the groups to decide if a device is compliant or not. So you just combine them all together using AND statements. And then if it's not compliant, it's just not a member of that compliant group. Then moving on to configuration profiles. So base settings and Jamf setup role-specific settings. I should mention the one there with base settings Wi-Fi. There's one difference in the scope. There is no scope for that one. This is for the return to service application. The way it uses that profile is you would specify it in the PreStage or in the app config for the return to service application, so it's a little bit different. The first one's the main base settings. So this will be always applied to all the devices within the shared device group. They would never change. This one's really important, the home screen layout. You don't want to have 2 competing payloads that are overlapping. You're going to end up with unpredictable behavior. So yeah, just one payload for this. It's just the dock that we are configuring. Always good to set a lock screen message. We display the name and the serial number just to replicate the host name that we use within the PreStage. And Cyber Essentials requires a passcode to be set of at least 6 characters, so we can do that as well. Then functionality restrictions. Erase all content and settings. You might want to allow that since you're giving them options to wipe the device anyway, but we're trying to guide them down a specific way of doing that using return to service application for that zero-touch enrollment workflow. We don't want them to modify account settings. We don't want them to use the Apple ID on these devices. Keep the wallpaper the same, keep the device name the same. The base settings for each Jamf setup. Oh, sorry, this one's if nothing's chosen, so that grey screen right at the start. That's what this one's for. And this is just saying these applications are allowed, nothing else. Wi-Fi, For return to service, it's only a really basic Wi-Fi network. You can use like a onboarding network, so SSID name, a password, or often no password, just to make it really easy. But that's a temporary measure. Once it's onboarded into Jamf, you don't want to rely on a SCEP profile going forward. Then the role-specific configurations. So again, only allow certain apps. So we've expanded this one to include Safari and Edge. And note that we've also got the com.apple.web app name bundle ID, although it's just a way of allowing web clips to be shown. You do need to make sure that the web clips have full screen enabled. If you don't, you get the full, well, it's odd, you're choosing full screen, but it hides all the URL bar and things like that, the extra features that you'd usually get in a web browser. If you do full screen, it just makes it a bit more simpler. It's not using Safari when you do that. It's only relying on the underlying WebKit. But it's doing it this way that will result in clearing the previous user's session data. So you want to do it this way every time with web clips. There's also some other restrictions to aid app control, such as installing configuration profiles. If you prevent that, you can't jailbreak it. App installation from alternative marketplaces and from web distribution. We're just trying to lock it down as much as possible. Only use the apps that we deploy through the MDM. Then the apps themselves. There's a few base ones there. So these are all going to be assigned to all devices within that shared device group. Normally you would scope them to a specific configuration, but the way that we manage this is we just hide the apps that aren't needed. We only show the ones that are needed in specific roles. But this helps with when you do a return to service wipe, all the apps are already on the device, so there's no time wasted in reinstalling them. It was something that was recommended actually from the guys at Electrona at JNUC last year. They did a good session on shared device mode, so we're just running with that. The apps include Jamf Setup, Jamf Reset, Return to Service, Microsoft Authenticator, and any other apps needed in a configuration. There is certain Microsoft apps that specifically support shared device mode. It's on their resources, so watch out for that. Jamf Setup, normal configuration, install automatically, not self-service. Scope it to all devices in that main group. We're using volume purchasing, VPP. And the app configuration is where you can really dive into the settings. So it's configured with Entra. You put in your client ID and SSO authority URLs there. All this extra detail, it's all in the Jamf documentation. If I was to cover all of this, it would be more like 200 slides, and nobody wants that. So I'll just show you the end result. When it's all working, you can use this as a reference to compare. If there's any problems, hopefully this should help highlight them. There's lots of branding options. And then there's the EA name and the list of the roles that we want to present to the user within the Jamf Setup app. Yeah, the settings here, they must match Entra, especially things like the role descriptions, like geometric assessment students. You can't have any spaces in it, you need to use hyphens to join them up. And we require Entra registration for device compliance, and that passcode is set. So if you were to ignore the prompt to set a passcode when you just opened the device and went into Jamf setup, you'd also be prompted at that point, and that's where that last key comes in, that prompts for the passcode requirement. App config for Jamf reset, again it's the Entra details, and if you're going to use a soft reset, then that just clears the extension attribute. That's really what they would be using day in, day out to turn the device around quickly. It links to the extension attribute, using that name, Jamf setup selection in this example. And we also disallow proximity setup during SERP Assistant. Next is Jamf Return to Service. This one is a bit unusual in that it has its own API, ID, and client secret. The other ones don't. And it links to the base settings Wi-Fi profile ID number. So it's 291. You get that from the URL when you're browsing it in Jamf. There's some optional settings as well. Countdown timer, so when you open the RTS app, you can set it to 1, I suppose, make it really quick, but the default's 5. The 3600, that's just going to remove the temporary onboarding Wi-Fi profile after 60 minutes. And you've also got the option of app preservation, just to make the user experience a bit better, speed up the initial setup of the device. Microsoft Authenticator is needed, but in this case it doesn't require any configuration. It gets its shared device mode from settings in Jamf Pro and other applications, so that's straightforward. Microsoft's apps which do support shared device mode have this extra key that you can use, shared device mode enabled. So the effect of that is when the next user signs into the device and this key is set to true, it's going to forget the last person, it's going to clear that session data and give the new user a clean experience going forward. Using that single sign-on extension as well. And this is a list of all the applications that currently support shared device mode. This is all linked on GitHub as well. Next, Jamf Pro settings. So this is the extension attribute we'll use for Jamf setup selection. It's just a simple EA with a text field, nothing special there. You do need to make a note of that EA name because you'll be using it later, configuring other things. Then in API roles and clients, we can see return to service alongside Jamf setup and reset. Setup and reset entries are automatically created when you've added those app licenses from Apple School Manager to Jamf Pro. There's nothing that you need to do there. But for RTS, you do need to create it here. And then you need to give it specific privileges like read mobile devices, read iOS configuration profiles, send mobile device remote wipe command, and view MDM command information in Jamf Pro API. We can then use the client ID and secrets in the app configuration that we looked at earlier. And because we're using an EA, we're wiping devices, we don't want to keep those values when they come back around, so we want to clear them. Specifically the user and location information, so we want to have that clean for the next person, but also the EA values, these are crucial. And to ensure the apps are always updated, we want to automatically force app updates You might as well do the self-service one as well, because it's going to affect other devices outside of shared devices. And then schedule Jamf Pro to check the App Store for new updates. And device compliance, it's a fairly new feature. I think it was tail end of last year this came up. Shared devices for iOS and iPadOS. And then we plug in our shared device groups that we looked at earlier, the compliant devices and applicable devices. And when you do go through this the first time, you're going to have to have an Entra admin account with wide-ranging access. If that's not you, maybe liaise with your Entra administrator at that point. And blueprints, yeah, it updates the operating system. It's been pretty good from what we have found recently. Better than the previous methods, quite reliable. But let's just keep sure operating system's updated. And we choose to require the latest OS updates if it's compatible within 3 days, and if it goes to that point, install just before midnight. Then Entra, I hope you're following along with the ducks here, if you recognize all these ones. Quite a retro feel to it. In Entra, we create a user group for each Jamf setup role. So this one's Jamf assessment student. Populate it with the members that are allowed to access that configuration. Then you do app registration to create the roles. And these should correspond with each Jamf setup configuration. So again, Jamf assessment student, and you can see the other ones in the background. No spaces allowed, so you need to use hyphens if you want to separate the words. Next, the Jamf Setup Enterprise application. So you need to ensure that enabled for users to sign in is enabled, otherwise they could just launch Jamf Setup and you'll see the full list. There'll be no user access control at that point, so that's really important. And assignment required. You can't just go through to any configuration. Then we'd add the user group created earlier and assign its specific role for that group. You can keep the naming conventions all the same. That makes it really simple to diagnose any issues later if you have to. And then in devices, we can view the registered shared devices and its compliant states. And again, shared devices, they don't have any owner registered against them. There's no authentication required in Authenticator to get into Entra. And this can be subject to your conditional access policies. You know, if a device isn't compliant, don't allow access to company Microsoft hosted resources, things like that. So that's all the components for the solution for shared iPads. And you can also do this on a phone as well. It works exactly the same. It does seem strange to share a phone, but some people ask for it. So it is an option. So key takeaways. Microsoft shared device compliance, not compatible with Apple's shared iPad mode. We are looking for a specific configuration each time anyway, so we'd need to have more than one for each user. Device inventory records in Jamf will show the last person that used the shared device, so you can track it that way. RTS will guarantee security of user data because it gets rid of everything. There's no chance of an app persevering with the previous user session. There's less risk with RTS. Don't scope the Wi-Fi profile to any devices. Rely on the PreStage and app config to reference that Wi-Fi profile. Use the full screen option in web clips to forget the last user. Use the allow some apps only restriction just to hide all the other apps that are currently installed. Yeah, be very careful of scope creep and configuration profiles, especially the home screen layout. You don't want to have duplicates and overlaps. Share device modes, Microsoft apps are the best ones to use wherever possible. Always fully tested apps for that data risk. Ensure the Jamf setup enterprise application in Entra has assignment required, otherwise everybody can see everything. And it's normal to have multiple Entra registrations when you use this approach. But it is safe. It's always going to reference the latest registration, not the older ones. So yeah, that's where we are just now. But in the future, I'd like to look at some of these things, Jamf Mobile Assist, to get the QR codes on the lock screen so you can just scan them and clear passcodes and send wipe commands without going into Jamf. Java and Jamf routines, they're the automation servers that support things like Jamf Mobile Assist. Again, that's the QR code for all the resources. If you haven't, yeah, I'll keep it up for a wee bit. And Diok, thank you. That's the end of that. We've got time for questions? 5 minutes, yeah. Any questions? Yep.
So how do you deal with so that they hear. How do you deal with particularly maybe some departments that rather lock them in a cupboard? Or is this kind of all kind of in a central location and you're like, you just hand out the iPads to the student one day?
Yeah, it's another part of the puzzle, isn't it? You can provide all the technical solution that you want, but if a device is offline, nothing's going to get to it. You can't really do anything. So it's an important consideration. Right now, we've got lots of schools spread over a large campus, all managed by different people. So there's no real central one way of doing it. But yeah, you could argue both ways. By centralising it, you've got tighter control over the security and availability of devices, making sure they're online to receive the blueprint command to keep updated and things like that, versus the autonomy that technicians can get with the distributed, decentralised approach of having iPads all over the place. It's just balancing the risk and reward with a spread out approach, more risk of things going missing. Maybe you're not getting that return on investment for all the money you've put into the service. Whereas the centralised approach, it's, yeah, like I said, tighter security. It's all there all in one place. You know where it is. But then if anything needs to go out to other schools, it creates other problems. So just need to judge it. The most secure device is one that's locked away in a drawer and it's never turned on. But it's not useful to anyone. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you.